It's very exciting to see bipartisanship among members of Congress who are thinking about these issues, working on these issues. And Representative Kim talked a lot about Secure 2.0. I actually, yesterday over lunch, had a conversation with somebody who pointed out to me that Secure 1.0 and Secure 2.0, which are two really landmark pieces of legislation in the retirement savings space, these have happened in this very polarized political climate in which we are living. The retirement savings may be one of the only issues we see movement on in the next couple of years. So to that point, I want to go ahead and introduce our next panel, who can talk about the complexity, when complexity meets longevity, bringing the full picture of someone's financial life into a conversation about retirement. So I'm delighted to introduce our moderator, Kerry Hannon, a senior columnist at Yahoo Finance. She's joined by Chris Farrell, senior economics contributor at Marketplace, Annamaria Lusardi, senior fellow, Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research, and Tina Haley, SVP and head of product at Corebridge Financial. Welcome to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. Morning. Great to be here with everyone. As we just heard, we're talking about sort of the big trends here. And, when complexity meets longevity, navigating our financial futures. So this is pretty big stuff. How can we help people navigate the financial challenges that are in front of them with longer lives? For me, and I think everyone here can attest to this, that the thing we hear the most is when you talk to people about retirement is that they're terrified about living their money. I mean, even people who have saved adequately are really, this is such a deep-seated fear. And, as we talked about yesterday, there are all those, there's the market risk, there's the risk of, political risk, there's health risk, there's, all of these, along with our longevity risk, of course, that contribute to all of this. And what I found is that the medical piece that Ken mentioned yesterday is really one of those great mysteries, right? And the fidelity number that came out this year is something like roughly, if someone retired this year at 65, an individual, it'd be something like $160,000 after tax, after Medicare for the rest of their life. So that's a pretty extraordinary number and something hard to get your head around. Just a couple of factoids. Older adults, 65 and older, are the fastest growing of the homeless population, which Devin alluded to in California, but it's actually nationwide. And the poverty among older adults is escalating. The share of older adults with debt has risen from 38% to 63% since 1990, according to a report by the Center for Retirement Research at Boston College. And of course, that's mortgage debt, that's credit card debt. It's a variety of different things. But this is what really gets me. And then I'll turn to our panel. This makes me crazy. This is Catherine Collinson, who's here, the Transamerica Center for Retirement Studies had a report out this year that they asked people, how much do you think you need to have saved for retirement? And 1 out of 5 said, oh, $2 million. So they said, okay, well, that's great. How did you come up with that lofty number? And nearly half of them said, oh, I guessed, like I threw a dart. I simply guessed. And about 42% said, I just don't want to think about it. Period. It's just like, so these are the things that get us rolling. So I think we've got this amazing panel here today. We're going to unpack some of this stuff, hopefully provide some solutions. And I think we've had the intros. So do you guys, is it okay we just jump right in since we all know who we are? Let's start. I think I'll get started right here with Anna. Okay, Annamaria, tell me, you've done some research on longevity, obviously, and most recently published a report with TIAA Institute. Can you share some of those findings with us today and kind of, tell us, what it has to do with navigating our financial futures?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And thank you very much for inviting me. I'm so excited to be here. I'm actually here on campus, so I only had to walk 10 minutes. So, which is how much now I know about campus, but it's super exciting to be here and to be able to collaborate with people at the Center for Longevity. So I cannot tell you how excited I am. The second thing I'm really excited about, this project we started several years ago with the TIA Institute. I'm very glad that Surya Kaluri is here today. And I have to say, it's probably one of the best projects we could start, and in particular because we had the support of, I think, people which have been so committed to starting and studying, this issue of longevity. So the data we collected each year started in 2017 had to do with measure of financial well-being, starting with financial literacy to behavior to other indicators. And in 2022, we thought of adding a simple questions, kind of measuring longevity. And so having a sense, do people know how much they are going to live, right? This is one of the fundamental pillars of planning for retirement that you already anticipate seem to be a lot of a guessing exercise rather than getting the data or the information. And this is exactly what the data documented. So now we can put some number into your guessing strategy that you were mentioning. And to our surprise, in a sense, the number of people who actually know how long a 65 years old man or woman can live is actually really small. Only 37% know, in a sense, what is the planning horizon, right? And what we also found is that there are huge variety in the population and that people tend to underestimate that number. And this is, of course, the worrisome part, that it's not that people are wrong in the other direction. Perhaps they plan to live very long. In fact, people underestimate that. And this is particularly true of men versus women. What we did in 2023, we wanted to get a little bit more information, not just on that number, the average, but for example, a little bit the variability. So do people also know what's the chance to live up to 90, right? So we have a little bit more information. Do people know that you might live beyond the average age? And also, what are the chances that, if you live to 65, you will not make it to 70, right? So to have a sense of more the distribution, in a sense, of our longevity. And of course, the number got even worse when we look at this, meaning that only 12% of the population actually have a sense of their longevity, have a sense of, how long is our life, what are the chances to make it to 90 and what are the chances to have a shorter lifetime. The reason why I'm saying that is because, and this is, I think, the most important part of our research, is that this knowledge matters and matters a great deal. And we find it to be associated with a variety of behavior, from saving for retirement to actually feeling to have adequate, to feel confident about the money one has done. For those who are actually saving for retirement, they are also more likely to annuitize their wealth. So in other words, this knowledge is associated with a lot of the behavior that are more conducive to retirement security. The point I'm trying to make, in case you don't know it, some of the things that we have tried to do for now 20 years, this is how long it takes to, maybe to do this research and make an impact, is that knowledge is also very important in being able to navigate this very complex world. And we are not thinking, even the way we have asked the questions, it's not that we are asking people, give us the precise number. So we are assessing, very general knowledge, and we are assessing very basic kind of knowledge and fundamental knowledge. And we find that this is what is missing. And I think that, not having this knowledge in a complex world, I think come with a lot of disadvantages and costs, which is that people are more likely, unfortunately, not to perhaps save more or prepare more, but in fact, they are much less likely to prepare for their retirement. And so complexity, I think, is a big disadvantage. And I want to repeat some of the words that were saying before, that empowering people with this knowledge can be another way to move toward having, a life of people which is more financially secure.
Thanks. Yeah, it's really taking control. If you can, a little knowledge goes a long way.
No, it's a long way.
So Tina, again, we've got some research that you maybe would like to pull apart for us. Can you share with us some of the key findings? I believe it's the Corebridge Financials paper with the longevity project.
That's right.
And what on funding longer lives. And so kind of the people quotient here. What were some of the concerns that popped up kind of from the people's attitudes?
And before I forget, there's a piece of paper on the table that you guys can all scan the code and get some of that data. Because I'll surely mess it up a little bit while I'm sitting here on stage. But we asked 2,200 people a simple question: do you want to live to 100? And the overwhelming percentage said yes. 54% of people said yes. And that was highest amongst Gen Z. We've talked about that earlier. And lowest amongst Gen Xers. It's certainly interesting. But while, we asked them that, we wanted to understand also, what concerns do you have about living longer? And things like quality of life, health problems, but overwhelmingly the highest rating was to running out of money. And while we started to understand some of the concerns, we also wanted to hear what the benefits were. Because there are benefits to living longer, right? You get to enjoy more time in your communities and with the relationships that you have. New experiences. Experiences don't stop when you turn 50, right? We can still experience new things, new learnings, exploring, more leisure time, and new discoveries. So, we're looking at people that are wanting to live longer and wanting to do it in a meaningful way. And that's certainly encouraging.
Thanks. And I should note for everyone watching virtually and in the audience here, we will take questions at the end. So if you have any wonderful thoughts, we'd love to hear your queries. Now, Chris,
yes.
on to you. What is the main reason that people are not saving for retirement? What is holding people back?
I think there's only one main reason that people are not saving for retirement, and that is simply what has been mentioned several times yesterday and today, is about 50% of the private sector workforce does not have access to an employer-sponsored retirement savings plan. And if you don't have access to an employer-sponsored savings plan, you don't save for retirement. And, the gap between, the difference is just really remarkable. It's not because people don't want to be saving. It's not because they're going, having that Starbucks cafe latte. So that's a main reason. The other thing is life is hard. Look, people lose your job. You lose your job. You're taking care of aging parents. You have a medical issue. Your child is sick. I mean, there are lots of interruptions throughout a life. And so I think that really makes it hard for people to save. So we're going to do one thing. Just one thing that comes out of this is we need to bring everybody into the retirement savings system. Then we can worry about how much are they saving, where are they saving it, but we need to bring everyone in the retirement savings system. So there's a bill that was reintroduced, I think on October 19th. It's sponsored by Senator Hickenlooper on the Democratic side and Tillis on the Republican side. And it's written by, it's an example of bipartisanship among economists, which is written basically by Teresa Gurley-Jucci, the New School, and Kevin Hassard here of the Hoover Institution. And it's taking the model that's been mentioned several times, which is the Oregon model, the California model, but making it federal, that you use the thrift savings plan of the federal government as your model. Anybody who's working for a company that doesn't have a retirement plan, they get automatically enrolled. And there's a variety of things that are in there, but we got to bring people into retirement savings system. And if we don't do that, they're not going to save for their retirement.
Yeah, because it's when it's there and it's automatic.
Right.
It's just the inertia. That's what we talked a lot about yesterday, that people just simply don't do it.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that, if I can just do one other thing. One of the things that's emerged from this conference, and I think it's really important, is the word social insurance. If you think about retirement and Social Security, you think about financial planning and the costs of long-term care. We don't embrace social insurance and risk sharing throughout the society, the notion that the individual is going to be able to absorb all these risks. Because one of the big disadvantages of this defined contribution saving system that has evolved is the individual is being asked to do too much. There's too much risk there. So I think whenever we're talking about this topic, you want to think about collective responsibilities, intergenerational interdependence, risk sharing as much as possible.
Thanks, Chris. Annamaria, so here, kind of cutting to the chase here, are people financially literate?
So, I agree with all what you have said, but the problem is, even once we do that, it's not enough. We live in a world where people change many jobs, right? And we live in a world where people are, by the age 35, perhaps change careers and so on. And so the labor market is very different today than with respect to the past. People start their life in debt, carrying student loan if they have gone to college. And so when people are accumulating their wealth, at a certain point, we are going to ask them to accumulate their wealth and make sure it lasts a lifetime. And I think what we have seen in the research is that some of these help that we are providing are not enough. When you enroll people in a saving account, they often stay at the minimum amount. Or when they change job, then they withdraw the money from their retirement account. So what I'm leading to the point is that one of the things we have documented over and over and over is not just that people do not have financial literacy, but the level of financial literacy is so low in this complex world, right? We are talking about all of these financial instruments. In fact, people don't even know what an interest rate is and cannot do a 2% calculation in the context of interest rate, and so if we are facing this huge complexity, clearly many policies are needed, but I think one of the policy has also to do to increase this level of knowledge, because I think it's just today as important as reading and writing. And this is how I would define illiteracy, that you are, if you don't understand kind of the world around you, if you don't have the instrument to understand it, it's very difficult even to take advantage of what the opportunities that are offered. So employers use a lot of, offer a lot of benefit, which actually a lot of workers do not use or do not use well. So I think all of the policy I've heard are incredibly important, but it's if you don't empower people with that basic knowledge, I don't think we will eventually make a change or help people, empower people to be financially secure. There is a lot to do. But I think one important piece is also increase the level of knowledge, because otherwise with complexity, you are going to be left behind.
So just to tag on that just slightly, when you say that, you mentioned is understanding interest rates. What would be two other things that people should, just basic things that people should know?
That is a question I can answer very well, because we designed 3 very simple questions that become known as the big 3. We didn't call them the big 3 at all. We just actually thought you were the little 3, not big. Where we're like a simple. The first one measured basically knowledge of interest and interest compounding, but in fact it's so simple. It measures numeracy. Can people deal with number in the context of financial decision making? Do people understand inflation, the effect of inflation, that inflation basically decreases your capacity to buy the same bundle of goods? And the third is a basic question about risk diversification. Do you know that if you invest your money in more assets with respect to one, you are actually facing less risk? Okay, these are really the fundamental. This is the ABC of finance, and this is the ABC behind almost every financial decision or every financial instrument. In the US, yet again, if there is a number I'd like you to take away, is 1/3, which is about 1/3 is financially literate. But this 1/3 is disproportionately white males from college-educated families.
Yeah.
So it's a privileged group. And this is why I think, we need to provide this knowledge and access to knowledge, to the whole population because women need it, and people with low income need it, and people with African American, Hispanic, and other racial groups, because these are decisions that we all make, and not just saving for retirement. Is, for example, access to financial instrument. I'm going to indulge on one quick things I've heard today, which is we want a policy for financial inclusion. And having designed a national strategy for financial literacy in Italy, I really want to say there is no financial instrument which is safe. So if you want to promote financial inclusion, you have to promote financial literacy, because you cannot give access to instruments that people do not understand. And I can tell you that people do not understand what an interest rate is. So if you don't increase that knowledge, you are going to be in trouble.
Thank you. I really appreciate you spelling that out. I just love the big three. That is really important. Now, Tina, let's talk a little bit about spending in retirement. What do people have any clue? I mean, what are the sort of tripping points there?
I'll give you a little bit of an answer on a personal note. I'm starting to become the demographic that we're focusing on, is like people heading into retirement. We're the first do-it-yourselfers. That was a big takeaway for me yesterday. It's like this generation coming up right now, we're the first people that are retiring with defined contribution plans. And what do you do with them? I've been fortunate to work at a company with a 401k since I was in my 20s. But I got to a point where I went, I need some help. I need financial advice. I need to understand what my needs are going to be in retirement and how I can start preparing for that. Now, I started in my 50s. I would propose that we start a lot earlier than that. Really, it goes to the financial literacy. The concepts of interest rate and inflation and risk pooling are very important, but so are, what does a 30-year retirement look like and how do you fund it? So I think we're probably woefully unprepared for this do-it-yourself generation, really understanding what it's going to take to retire and how to prepare for that from a financial perspective and what their budget's going to look like. But my big recommendation, we're big fans of financial advice, going out and getting the advice, which I admit, I think we could do a way better job as an industry, as a society, in making that advice available to everyone. Because right now, substantially, you have to pay for the advice, but not everyone can afford that or has access to those resources. So I think we could do better.
It's welcome to the new retirement, right? So Chris, this is now becoming one of my favorite topics, but for the typical worker, what is the most important financial decision that they make?
So for the typical worker, the most important financial decision they make, and this is the median income worker, is when do they file for Social Security? And that has a dramatic impact. I think that Jason Fichter yesterday said, but basically the difference is if you file at 72 versus age 70, it's about a 75% difference. And so if you're thinking about a typical worker and who doesn't really have any retirement savings, I mean, they really don't. If the Federal Reserve's numbers, someone's 55 to 60, 401k, IRA, the median is at 140,000. And many people don't even have that, obviously. So Social Security, when you take Social Security, you can't outlive your Social Security benefit. The later that you take it is, the better the benefit is. So one of the things that I think would be nice to see over time is a reframing of Social Security, because I think it is great that people can file for Social Security at age 62. There are a lot of people that need to file at age 62 or 63 or 64 because they've lost their jobs, because of ill health, because they're taking care of aging parents. But you kind of want to reframe it that you file for Social Security at age 70, because that's when you get your maximum benefit. And that really makes a difference. And you cannot outlive that benefit. But then work your way down, because life intervenes, life is complicated, and you file earlier if you need to.
And I like, and the numbers are extraordinary if you can wait.
That's right.
If you can wait. But I like that this group didn't bring it up right now. We may have talked about it yesterday, this idea that I think Teresa had thrown out this thing about maybe you can take a little bit at 62 of your Social Security. right? Have you
Right.
heard about some of that? I mean, just different ways to frame it.
Yes, and this is mostly designed for people who have a 401k
Yes.
and would have the ability to do some annuities. So it's an added layer of complexity. I always worry about the complexity that we're just adding more layers. But again, there is a lot of thinking going on in the financial services industry for people who have retirement savings. How can they delay taking Social Security without diminishing their standard of living? And there's a lot. It's a good idea.
So Anna, what are some ways or your suggestions of how people can better prepare to be financially literate? And is there some like core things that they can do to be proactive?
Yeah, one of the, I think it's hard to do this yourself. And I think we see it very much when we do international comparison across countries. So for example, in the US, even though we live in a country with the most developed financial markets, people are not more financially literate than people in other G7 countries. And in fact, often they are less financially literate, to the point that, we don't learn by just absorbing, looking at the world around us, right? In the same way in which we don't probably learn literature or history just by, watching TVs or reading newspapers. So I think, this has to be more and more a formal education. And this is why I think we are using the result of our research and the comparison, by the way, with knowledge also among 15 years old in the US. Here is a group of people who are going to make such fundamental decisions. And in fact, so many have little financial literacy that, we really would like to see it in the schools, and particularly starting as early as possible. Kind of your point, starting at the elementary education, I think actually should come when the tooth fairy comes, you get the money, here is the financial literacy, but also, certainly in high school and so on. And I'm very proud to say that we have a big project here at Stanford to actually teach personal finance in college. And we have actually started doing it. I shouldn't take credit. I started this course at GW, but here, two professors in the econ department, one came out of retirement to actually teach a personal finance course. It was an instant success. 362 students out of, I think, 1,000 or so among first year, took the course. And what we are trying to do now is try to actually have this course in every kind of university and colleges and so on, because, young people today have to make such important decision. And I think the sooner you start, the better it is. One of the things that a resource that, some of us have, much less so us, is time, right? And using time on our side is critically important. And this is one of the big lessons we are teaching also our students. One of the things I have to say, by the way, one of the things we have also learned from studying financial literacy, and yet again, I want to go back to the personal finance index that we designed together with the TIA Institute. This time we didn't use 3 questions, but 28. So it's a very complex measure. One of the things that people absolutely do not know and have the most difficulty with is risk. Because risk is, even the concept of risk is inherently complex. And so, we teach risk toward the end, but one of the things I wanted to tell you, in particular, the people working in the financial industry, annuity is something that even the students at Stanford do not understand. So there is clearly a lot of work we need to do to, I think, either simplify it and also to be able to, teach this in an effective way.
Thank you. And Tina, you talk to people and they say, oh, I'm not going to retire till I'm, 70 or something, or late 60s. They always throw that number down the road. But Gallup recently, and EBRI comes up with their number every year too. But I think the most recent Gallup I saw was maybe 61 is the average age that people do actually step out of the workforce and stop earning. So when we're talking about these 3 decades of financing a life and this new era that we're in, what are you seeing here as some ways that fundamentally is shifting?
Well, thanks for bringing up annuities, because I do think they're a great solution. And having been in financial services, product development, developing these products now for 20 years personally, the tides have changed. You know, there was a day when an annuity was basically you wrote a check to an insurance company and they promised to pay you for the rest of your life. You didn't have access to that money. It was opaque. People really didn't understand it. Well, you're taking my money and well, what if I die? Well, if you die, you don't get any more payments from us. And people have a hard time with that. And probably about 20 years ago, we started looking at income benefits. How can we meet people where they are? People don't want to have that black box, the trust factor. Just trust me, we'll pay you for the rest of your life. They want access to their money in case of emergency. And we started writing these income guarantees that allowed for that greater amount of flexibility and a lot of choice within how you decide to take your income, when you decide to take it, and growth and protection opportunities along the way. So again, that risk pooling, we could probably do a little better than you would on your own. We have people that are very smart that really understand the risk. We manage that risk very well as an industry. And we're starting to see a real, I think, acceptance. If you look at annuity sales data, the product is really starting, I think, to gain some popularity amongst the 61-year-olds of the world. And so I think that's the good news, is that things are changing a little bit, but there's still a stigma that's out there with these products. And, I think the test of time, we'll see how that goes, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of that is attributed to fees. I think that the whole idea of what the cost of doing it, and as that comes down, as things
Right.
work their way through. Chris, so, what does someone do if they really haven't had much saved for retirement? I mean, there are options out there.
There are
what do
options,
you see?
and the default position shouldn't be despair. Absolutely not.
Good.
But if we're thinking about, part of one of the themes here is the 100-year life. And I think one of the key things is both thinking about the quality of jobs in a lifetime throughout the life course. I mean, look, if you're living on a low, unstable income for employers who, lay you off every once in a while, and they don't have retirement savings plans, they don't have a health insurance plan, by the time you reach your 50s, life is hard, life is tough. So the quality of jobs is really important. It's about thinking about this whole issue about retirement, but it's also about building in institutionalized working longer. It keeps being mentioned about, how can you live off your savings for 30 years? Why would you want to live off your savings for 30 years? And is that a good idea, that you're going to work for 30 years and then you're going to live off your savings for 30 years? I know a few people that can do that, but not very many. So it's thinking about how do we redesign the workplace so that it becomes institutionalized. So people may work part-time, they may work full-time, they change their careers, but the notion of working longer doesn't become this dreaded notion, but it is that, the workplace is a community. And it's a built-in community, and it's intergenerational in most places. So I think we need to focus a lot of our effort about how do you create a portfolio over a lifetime? And it's breaking down these institutions, because the notion, I went here, I just turned 70 last week. I went to Stanford. The notion that you take your education when you're a young person, and then that's it. And then you're just going to go, work for the rest of your life, and then you're retired. These silos are breaking down. So how do we take advantage of it? And the population is aging. And so how do we take advantage of it? So here's my forecast, famous forecast, 30 years from now. I won't be here, so no one can actually yell at me. But 30 years from now, Stanford University, all these universities are going to be multi-generational institutions. There will not be a dominant age group in this university because it's just a question that you asked. You're going to need continuing education throughout your life to learn new skills. So it's great to save. It's wonderful to save. Let's have retirement savings. Let's shore up Social Security, but let's change the nature of work throughout a lifetime.
I love it. I mean, work is not a four-letter word.
No.
I mean, it really, what you said, it's not just the economic piece of it. It's the social, it's the mental, it's the feeling needed and all of those great things. And I think coming out of the pandemic, we have these tremendous trends that really
Yes.
spur the ability to continue to work longer. The remote work is out of, the genie's out of the bottle there. There are more contract jobs. People are changing. They're making career transitions at all ages. And it's not like you don't have enough runway to do it. People are saying, yeah, go do that,
Yeah.
And virtual learning has made education something that people can get, and it doesn't cost a fortune to reskill and all of that. So, okay, we've got a little bit of time here, not a lot, but I'd love to get some questions. Do we have some out there? Any online ones, or we've got some here in the audience? Yeah. Yeah.
So we asked our online audience from whom they would rather receive financial education, and the vast majority, about 60%, said from their employer or school. Is there any data, either from your experience or actual hard data, to suggest what are the best resources for one to get financial resources, or does it depend on some factors?
So clearly, that's exactly what the data we see, that people trust two institutions, actually three. They trust their friends and family, but often the friends and family know as little or as much as they do, right? So that sometimes doesn't provide perhaps as much information, or provide a lot of information for those who know a lot. But the school, I think, and the employer are indeed, I would say, the two best vehicles to provide financial education. At the school, because then you can reach all of the young. And that's why, for example, I think it's very important to have it mandatory. Otherwise, we only have it in the rich school or in certain areas or so on. And the employer as well is, I think, a great source. Of course, we suffer from the problem that half of the population is not in the workplace. So, but, to reach the adults is actually very complex, right? And so this is where that can be done. But I also think, the most important education is the education also you get from trusted sources. And so I think the community here is particularly important. So from churches to community leaders and so on, to also institutions who have been devoted to financial education. There are several institutions from, Council of Economic Education, Jumpstart Coalition for Financial Literacy, the CFPB has a mission to provide tools. And I think these are the other resources available.
Yes, excellent. Do you have anything to add to that, Chris?
So the only thing, it's, we had a period of time, this is now with 401k plans and 403b plans, where we did have a lot of good education. The employers, Fidelity and Vanguard, through your employer, give you good information. And the sign-up rate wasn't that good. So I do think it is also really important. Financial aid is great, but, and I think it was Aaron who said it yesterday, automatic enrollment, automatic escalation, target date funds, let's automate as much of this financial literacy as possible.
Yes, but I think it's not enough. I don't think that it will move the needle necessarily, because I think people are different. That's the problem. The automatic enrollment is a very super rough way to, I think, help people, because, everyone is different. And that's, I think, some of the disadvantages.
Thank you. These were interesting points. I just have a couple of comments. One for Tina. No, you're not the first generation to depend on self-directed retirement, as I think we just heard. Many of us who work in higher ed and for nonprofits have been dependent on 403b for our entire careers. And sometimes you get good information and sometimes you don't, but it's a large segment. Many of us never had pensions, including Stanford faculty, I would add, although I'm only an alum here, not faculty. The other point about continuing it 30 years from now, I guess I would say that we're already seeing this retraining, but it's much more at community college levels and maybe some four-year public universities. I think we'll still see the post-high school traditional students being the majority at some universities, including this one, but there'll be more programs. But already we're seeing, I think, that trend toward getting new skills or new credentials partway through life. Thank you.
I was just going to really quick add, regarding the education at the employer level, I think there's a lot of work we could do there, even with the 403B plans, some of which have an education component to it. They have educational advisors. I don't think we're doing enough. And there's some work to do there.
Can you hear me? Perfect. Ryan Frederick, CEO of Here. My goodness, the complexity is overwhelming. It seems like that is such a headwind, and it's in a number of the title of these panels. So you're hitting on point. I'm going to add an element of additional complexity. So part of this, there's something easy to wrap our heads around the 100-year life. But it feels like with additional investments in science and technology, there's some people that anticipate that there'll be further advancements in longevity. For example, The Economist about a month ago had a special feature highlighting 120 and how that's more feasible. Dr. Rosian from the Cleveland Clinic wrote a book last year, The Great Age Reboot. He was particularly optimistic in how long people might live, both median and kind of beyond, suggesting that if you're 55 today, you may live to 115, not even halfway through your life. So I'm curious, as you go through some of this analysis, how much are you factoring in the fact that longevity it's a moving target? Whatever it was when you were born is likely the wrong number and could be increasingly the wrong number.
Thanks, Ryan. We just have a quick couple 30 seconds. Who wants to jump on that, Chris?
Well, I would say for right now, as we're having this meeting, what I want to do is see the median income worker, the median income family. I want to see their life expectancy raised. And so, yes, there are going to be maybe some people who are going to be out there, but let's have a healthier overall population. Let's have a wealthier overall population. And we worry about that stuff later on because we'll redesign our institutions.
Either of you want to chime in on that one, or we good?
So you're absolutely right. There is so much uncertainty around that, but the problem is people underestimate even living to 90, let alone 150. So we have a lot of work to do. And I feel like, at least let's convince them that, they are living a little longer than they expect now because they seem to, think such a short horizon. So, that's the first, almost the lower hanging fruit.
Well, thank you, Annamaria and Tina and Chris. You guys are amazing. I really appreciate that. What great panelists. Everyone give them a shout out.